Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. The SNP has a major problem when it comes to inappropriate behaviour. Instead of shunning it, it welcomes it. We only have a look at that Jordan Linden affair, where a man, Jordan Linden, inappropriately touches a younger man, and then the party punishes those who confront him and who raise the issue. And today, Humza Yousaf has warmly welcomed and said he will happily campaign with Patrick Grady. Grady, of course, is another self-admitted sex pest and serial toucher-upper of young men. He had to have the whip removed for 6 months, at the end of which he was warmly welcomed back into the fold. Really? Really? And now, Humza Yousaf says he will happily campaign with him. This man should be shunned. He should be reviled. The trouble with Humza Yousaf is he would happily campaign with Jimmy Savile if he thought Savile would win him a seat. And to be honest, with a lot of the people in the SNP, Jimmy Savile would be the least of them, I think. We all know what the P stands for in SNP. Anyway, we'll take a look at this article, see what's going on and see why Humza Yousaf is so stupid as to align himself with such an odious toad of a man. Here goes. So Humza Yousaf will campaign alongside the shamed sex pest SNP MP Patrick Grady if he wins the nomination. The Glasgow North MP is seeking re-election despite sending 6 months out of the party after inappropriately touching a teenager at a Nat's night out in 2019. Humza Yousaf has admitted he would campaign alongside the shamed SNP MP Patrick Grady if he stands at the next election. Grady is reportedly planning to seek re-election in his Glasgow North seat for the Nats, despite having been suspended from the Commons after being found to have behaved inappropriately to a teenage staffer. He likes young boys. Grady spent 2 days away from Westminster as part of his punishment and lost the SNP whip for 6 months, although he was later allowed back into the fold, sparking criticism from the victim and other parties. This man, Grady, a man who obviously has to go out and inappropriately touch people because he looks like a big, fat, odious, slimy slug of a man, hardly attractive in any way, and yet he has this proclivity for young men. Teenagers, really, for teenagers. And it's not surprising he has to go and reach out to them, because I don't see too many of them reaching out to him. And yet, despite admitting being this person, the party let him in. He is someone who is 6 inches away from committing serious sexual offences, and the party welcomed him back. You have to ask as to the integrity of the SNP. And I know integrity is a word that doesn't often align itself with the SNP. But surely, even they must see that having someone like this in their party is not good for the optics. Why, instead of welcoming him back, didn't you just give him a lifetime ban? Why did Parliament give him a 2-day ban after he admitted doing it and not make a lifetime ban and make him stand down as an MP? Why did his local constituents not gather together and ask for another election and do a recall election, get him out? Do they really want this kind of person to represent them? They must have children of their own, and yet they'll vote for him. But that is the wild-eyed loons of the SNP. They'll happily, I think, offer up their own children to the likes of Patrick Grady just to get independence. It's madness. Mr. Yousaf positioned himself as the first activist rather than a potential First Minister during the bitter SNP leadership contest, and asked on Monday if he would stand alongside Grady. He said if he's gone through the assessment, cleared the assessment process, and the local constituency party, of course, has selected him, then I will be up and down the country campaigning with whoever the candidates are. But that is a hypothetical point. Because it's not necessarily true that he will get selected, but the chances are with the Nats he probably will. They will select anyone because they're desperate. But how is this man still in the party? Mr Yousaf also hinted it is not a foregone conclusion that Glasgow North MP would win re-selection. He says, and I've not heard anything from Patrick Grady. But the very fact that this man has the temerity to even put himself forward to stand again, despite what he's done, has the man got no shame? He should be pointed out, ridiculed, shunned. Honestly, everyone who ever sees him on the street should stand and point and call him out for what he is. Patrick Grady will have to go through the vetting process as any other candidate, said Humza Yousaf. And of course, like anyone else, his conduct and his behaviour will be part of that assessment during the vetting process. It would be for the local constituency to determine whether or not he's an appropriate candidate, even if he's assessed. No, this is one of these things that if you were a leader, you would make a decision and just say no. But of course, Humza Yousaf is anything but a leader. Patrick Grady, he continued. Patrick Grady, of course, was right to be punished by the SNP in terms of suspension. He was right to then apologise publicly as well as apologise privately. But, be in no doubt, every single candidate that goes forward for a general election, their conduct and behaviour will be taken into account. He was right to be punished by the SNP, but not in terms of a suspension. It should have been an outright lifetime ban. To do anything else is to accept that this behaviour is acceptable. They have welcomed back a man who inappropriately touches teenagers. And that tells you all you need to know about the SNP. And it isn't the only time that this has happened and that the SNP has kind of, been very soft on this behaviour. An investigation by Commons authorities found Mr Grady had acted inappropriately towards a teenage party staffer at an SNP event in London, with the victim heavily criticising how the complaint was subsequently handled. The man, who no longer works for the party, said his life was made a living hell and he'd been made to feel as though it was his fault. This is what they do. They victim shame, they turn it around. Oh, it isn't the man that's abusing you that's in the wrong, it's you for tempting him. That's the SNP way. Scottish Conservative Deputy Leader Megan Gallagher said, the fact that Humza Yousaf would be happy campaigning for Patrick Grady will dismay many people, including the disgraced MP's victim. But that is how it works. The SNP always support their own and always shun the victim. It's the same in the Jordan Linden case, where they punished the whistleblowers and did nothing for Jordan Linden. And they blame the victim every time. It's the victim's fault. It's never the SNP's fault. The First Minister has also been depressingly silent on the SNP's sexual misconduct scandal in North Lanarkshire. This is the Jordan Linden thing. Under his leadership, it looks like the SNP shamefully will continue to close ranks around the perpetrators of sexual harassment and those who shield them rather than their victims. And I did a video yesterday where we have to ask if Humza Yousaf, who's been dragged into this Jordan Linden affair, will he back the victim or back the perpetrator? And I think it's quite clear today from this that Humza Yousaf is definitely going to back the perpetrator of these crimes, because he cannot be seen to do anything against the SNP. So if you are the victim of SNP abuse, shall we say, don't expect any kind of support from them. You will be the one that's blamed. Grady is understood to be facing a potential rival in Glasgow Central, MP Alison Thewlis, whose seat will disappear under boundary changes. And it was reported that Grady hopes his Catholic faith will work in his favour in trying to get back to Westminster, although polls suggest that the Nats face an uphill battle to hold on to their Glasgow seats. In fact, they could be wiped out in Glasgow at the moment. It's looking that way. The 43-year-old made unwanted sexual advances to the staffer, who was 19 at the time, and he stroked his hair, his back and his neck. And reacting to the news, the victim said Patrick Grady hasn't stood down as an MP because the SNP have emboldened him to feel that he is untouchable by allowing him back into the party. And that means that anyone else who's tempted by these things, anyone else who's like this, anyone else who is an odious wanker, basically, will find a home in the SNP where they know they'll be able to continue these actions, continue to abuse people, and they will be protected by the party. And that, my dear friends, is the SNP. And as I say, we all know what the P stands for. I shall round off and come up. I think if Grady is selected, that alone would send a message out across the whole of Scotland. It would be saying that the SNP finds this behaviour acceptable. The SNP is on the side of the criminal. The SNP is on the side of the sexual pervert, and it goes against victims. It does not support victims of its own proclivities. For Humza Yousaf then to be seen campaigning in Glasgow alongside this man would then suggest to people that Humza Yousaf finds this behaviour totally acceptable. And that makes him just as bad as Patrick Grady. It makes everyone in the SNP as bad as Patrick Grady. Because unless the others stand up and outright say no, anyone who fails to say no, every MSP, every MP, every staffer, everyone needs to stand up and say no. And unless they do, they're implicitly saying yes. And that would be quite shameful for them, I think. They must certainly realise that people generally find this kind of behaviour unacceptable. It is disgusting. It is degenerate. And that, my friends, sums the SNP up in one go, should he be selected. Now, hopefully, the selection committee will see sense. They will just throw this man overboard. Because even for the SNP, this has got to be a step too far, surely. But you never know. And we'll find out soon. But it will be very telling if he does get selected. If he gets selected, then the SNP truly represents filth. And I shall stop there. Thank you very much for watching. If you like what you see here on the channel, please hit that subscribe button, ring that bell, leave a like, leave a comment, please share the video. But especially leave a like. That's the really important one. And until next time, stay safe, stay well. Don't trust them. Just don't trust them. And goodbye.